ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Hey, Jules and Jez here, and on Not Stupid this week, we're talking about baking.
Yes, it's a copyright stoush between two cookbook authors, Nagi Mahashi and Brooke Bellamy.
So who owns a caramel slice recipe? You can find Not Stupid on ABC Listen.
I'm hungry.
He was the sole surviving guest of a deadly beef Wellington lunch, and now he's had the chance to tell his story in court. Pastor Ian Wilkinson has given evidence in the trial of Erin Patterson, who's accused of attempting to murder him and of murdering his wife and another couple. Today, investigative and true crime reporter Rachael Brown on the latest from the mushroom murder trial. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Rachael, it's been such a dramatic week in the trial of Erin Patterson. For the first time, we've heard from the sole surviving guest of the lunch, which led to the deaths of 3 people.
Yes, Pastor Ian Wilkinson, he was the only guest that survived that deadly beef Wellington lunch. He gave evidence. He was sitting in the witness box wearing a black vest and a grey-coloured shirt. Erin Patterson is accused of attempting to murder him, and she's accused of murdering his wife, sister and brother-in-law. Now, she sat in the court dock, which was only about 10 metres away from him, and she sat listening intently, mostly a neutral look on her face as Ian Wilkinson gave evidence.
Yeah, it's good to remember that she's actually there in the courtroom throughout this trial. What's Erin Patterson's demeanour been like?
Most of the time, I think she's been staring straight ahead. It's fairly emotionless. She's behind me, so I don't really like looking around. I've noticed a lot of other court journos turning around, and I understand why they need to do that. They want to see kind of interactions or flickers when certain witnesses get up, but I don't want her to feel like a zoo exhibit, so I've tried not to turn around a lot, but the one time I did see her smile was at a memory of her son making a rocket-propelled car with Don, his granddad, in their backyard.
Okay, so he's taken the stand and he's questioned about the day of the lunch itself, which was on July the 29th, 2023. What did he recall about that day and the meal?
He described arriving at the house, exchanging pleasantries with Erin, talking about the house itself. Ian Wilkinson spoke then of Erin working in the kitchen as the guest stood on the other side of the island bench in the open plan kitchen. Ian said he didn't see the preparation of the lunch itself, just some potatoes being mashed and food being plated up. He described the meal as individual beef Wellingtons with green beans and mash. And he said that Gail and Heather offered to help with the plating up, but Erin said no, she was fine, she'd look after it. And then Ian described the plates, confirming some of the earlier testimony we've heard by her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, about the colour. Ian Wilkinson said there were 4 large grey dinner plates and 1 smaller plate, which was a different colour, and he remembered it being an orangey tan colour. Now, he said Gail picked up 2 of the grey plates, Heather picked up the other 2 grey plates, and then he says Erin picked up the odd plate and carried it to her place at the table, and that's the plate that she ate from.
And then what does Ian say happened over the course of that meal while they're sitting down eating this meal?
He says there was a little conversation mostly about the meal, who ate what. He and Heather ate their whole meals while Dawn ate his and some of Gail's beef Wellington. She couldn't finish it all. After the lunch, though, Ian Wilkinson says Erin Patterson told the guest she had medical issues to discuss. She announced that she had cancer, and Ian says she believed it was very serious, that it was life-threatening. The defence has told the court, however, it concedes that Erin had never been diagnosed with cancer.
Okay, so that's what was happening during the lunch. And then the questioning turns to when Ian and his wife start to feel really ill.
Yeah, they felt okay during the afternoon and in the evening, but in the night they camped out beside various bathrooms each, both experiencing vomiting and diarrhoea. He says that Simon Patterson called him because Simon had heard his parents are sick, Don and Gail. Simon called to see how they were. They were reluctant to go to hospital, but Simon was adamant that they should. So he drove them to Korumburra, but the Korumburra beds were full because Don and Gail were there. So he drove them on to Leongatha Hospital. The next day, a doctor informed them of suspected mushroom poisoning, and they were both advised they needed time-critical treatment. So they were transferred to Dandenong Hospital. And Ian Wilkinson says the last thing he remembers is being given a charcoal substance to drink at Dandenong. And then he doesn't remember anything after that. And during that time, his wife passed away. The two women died on the Friday after the lunch. Don died the next day. And I think that was the same day Ian was put into an induced coma.
Okay, and Rachel, as you mentioned, the court has also heard from Erin's ex-husband, Simon. So just briefly, what did he share with the court? Because he was actually invited to the lunch, wasn't he? But he didn't go to it.
And he did say yes. He was invited 2 weeks out. He initially said yes, but the jury was shown a text exchange where Simon, the night before at around 7 p.m, pulled out. He told Erin via text he was too uncomfortable. Erin replied that she was disappointed. You know, she'd spent a lot of time and money on cooking this meal. She wanted him there because she said in the text message it might be the last time she could host a lunch like this. Simon's testimony outlined his relationship with Erin. He said that despite separating in 2015, the pair had remained amicable until the end of 2022. Now, that's when tensions arose when Erin found out Simon had listed himself as separated on a tax return. So that has implications for the kind of government benefits that Erin could claim, including child support. So Erin apparently was not happy and sent, quote, extremely aggressive messages to the family group chat over these child support payments in the months leading up to the alleged murders.
Okay, so Rachel, the court has also heard this week what Erin Patterson was doing in the lead-up to this deadly lunch. Now, this goes to friends that she'd made online. They were called as witnesses, weren't they?
Yes, several women befriended Ms. Patterson online on a Facebook group chat that started talking about the investigation into Callie Lane. Now, she's the water polo player who was charged over the disappearance of her newborn baby. So it started as chat over that. It grew into things like about current affairs, their lives, their kids, and cooking.
And the jury was shown a series of screenshots from their group chat which showed Erin's enthusiasm for cooking with mushrooms.
One of the women told the court she seemed to really like mushrooms. She'd bought a dehydrator. She was excited about that. She'd been blitzing things, hiding powdered mushrooms in everything, mixing it into chocolate brownies. She said the kids had no idea. So the court was showing this Sunbeam Food Lab dehydrator that she'd bought for $229, if you're interested. Mm-hmm. And she then also was asking for advice about cooking beef Wellington because she hadn't done it before. One woman chimed in with some advice, and then Erin asked what kind of cuts of meat would be best.
And the court also heard that Erin was talking to this group of friends online about the relationship that she was having with her ex-husband, Simon.
Yeah, one friend mentioned coercive control 3 times and was asked why she put abusive when it came to Simon Patterson in her police statement. She said, well, that's what I consider coercive control as abuse. And a couple of the women used the word controlling when it came to Simon Patterson. One said that Erin had painted her husband, who's a devoted Baptist, as coercive and abusive, and she spoke about how the religion of Simon and his family was a point of tension. She said that Erin had said she was an atheist. Sending the kids to a religious school was apparently a point of tension. We also heard that Erin wasn't that happy with Simon's cleanliness and how he kept his house, you know, when the kids went over there. So hearing that and watching Simon Patterson, who was sitting in the courtroom at the time, I just thought this would be so uncomfortable for both of them. listening to all this, the detritus of their relationship on show for all to see.
Well, Rach, that's some of the key evidence that the court has heard already. But let's just zoom out for a moment. It's all still playing out, of course, but just explain to me and remind me what the prosecution's case actually is. What are they putting to the jury?
The prosecution, led by Nanette Rogers SC, is alleging that Erin deliberately poisoned, with murderous intent, each of her lunch guests. Now, the prosecution says that Erin invited Don and Gail Patterson and Ian and Heather Wilkinson for lunch on the pretense that she'd been diagnosed with cancer and needed advice on how to tell the kids. But the prosecution says Erin didn't consume any of the death cap mushrooms, but just pretended she was suffering the same type of illness as the lunch guests to cover it up. Now, the prosecution is alleging Erin told a number of lies. They are where she had sourced the mushrooms. She says it was from Woolies and an Asian grocer. The prosecutors allege Erin used iNaturalist, which is a website to locate mushrooms and other flora and fauna. The jury was told of 2 posts to that iNaturalist site, 2 sightings of death cap mushrooms in the Loch and Outram areas. And the prosecution says that Erin visited both of those towns, Loch and Outram, soon after those posts were made.
All right. And quite interesting, Rachel, that the prosecution has told the jury it doesn't need to have a motive. It's not alleging any motive.
No, and Sam, it's not one of the 4 elements of murder that the prosecution needs to prove. And Dr. Rogers SC said in her opening remarks, "You might be wondering now, why would the accused do this? What's the motive? You might still be wondering at the end of the trial. But motive is not something that has to be proven by the prosecution. You do not have to be satisfied what the motive was, or even if there was one. But Sam, I will say it might not have to prove motive, but it does have to prove intent. So it seems that without a motive, the jury will have to still somehow decide if Erin Patterson did deliberately and intended to deliberately poison her guests with death cap mushrooms."
And Rach, of course, Erin Patterson has pleaded not guilty to all of these charges. So what is her defence arguing in the court?
When the trial opened, her defence barrister, Colin Mandy SC, said there was no intent to hurt anyone and the deaths were the result of a tragic accident. He said the main issue that the defence will be arguing is that Erin didn't deliberately serve poisoned food to her guests. Colin Mandy told the court the issue in the trial will be how she acted after the guests fell ill and whether that was reasonable. We've heard a lot of things that she did, it's called post-offence conduct, that she told police that she'd never foraged, that she didn't own a dehydrator. But we know some of those things have been conceded that she did forage and her dehydrator was found at Leongatha Tip. But Colin Mandy said to the jury that his client panicked and now admitted to dumping the dehydrator. And he said that was because she was overwhelmed that people had died because of a meal she'd served, disputing claims by the prosecution that she was trying to cover her tracks. He said to the jury, might someone panic in a situation like that? Is it possible that people might do and say things that are not well thought out and might, in the end, make them look bad? So the prosecution says it's, incriminating conduct. The defence is saying people died and she panicked. But the defence has argued Erin Patterson did not deliberately serve poisoned food.
Well, of course, the trial is continuing. It's got a while to go yet. What are we expecting? How many witnesses are to be called and how long will it last for?
I don't actually know, Sam, and we can only tell you who's up next if the jury's heard. We're in prosecution witnesses at the moment. I don't know whether the defence will call any witnesses. I don't know whether Erin will take the witness stand. Now, she doesn't have to give evidence in our legal system. As you know, she's innocent until proven guilty. So it's really on the prosecution to prove its case. The defence doesn't have to put Erin in the stand. And of course, I should say, there should be no adverse view taken by the court and by the jury if she chooses not to give evidence.
Rachael Brown is an investigative and true crime reporter with the ABC. For daily updates, follow the Mushroom Case Daily podcast. Find it on the ABC Listen app. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed and Adair Shepherd. Audio production by Sam Dunn. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. Thanks for listening.